Good evening. At this time, I'd like to call the meeting to order. When you're ready, Secretary, please call the roll.
Mr. Anderson? Here. Mrs. Gelbert? Here. Mrs. Gasparo? Here. Mr. Brown? Here. Mr. Cure? Here. And Secretary Dr. Hall?
Here, please stand.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Three things.
Some glasses.
All right. It's now time for our good news report this evening. We have a good news report on the Crete Monee Middle School grand opening. Mrs. Kakala Christmas, principal.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening. I never know who to look to here. So, well, I'm going to quickly invite all of you and remind everyone that we have our community open houses to celebrate the expansion and redesign of the middle school. Wednesday, yes, we're very excited. It's been a long time coming, I know. We're very excited to invite all the community to come out tomorrow evening, that's the 28th, from 5 to 8 p.m. And again on Saturday, October 1st, from 10 a.m. to 12 noon. And also our ribbon cutting ceremony is Thursday, the 29th. The ceremony begins at 9 a.m. and the ribbon cutting will take place at 9:30 a.m. All at the middle school. Looking forward to seeing everyone there. And once again, we're super excited and thank you to the board and to the community for supporting the middle school's expansion. The kids are really enjoying their time there, I think, so far. So we're looking forward to seeing everybody there. Thank you.
I would like to add that we will be live streaming the event. On Thursday? On Thursday, yes.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Is this open to the public, or the public can come?
Yeah.
We have, okay. Sure. Okay, next we have our public comment portion of the meeting. First, we have Terry Hudson regarding the district staff / alumni choir and performing arts consultant.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
And some more good news to your good news. I'm a Crete Monee alumni, graduated 2001. And I made it. I did pretty good for myself. I'm known in the performing arts world as the performing arts doctor. I was here as one of the original consultants when this facility opened and facilitated training of your theater director also now. I also came back and I taught choir. Co-directed show choirs here, as well as the choirs at the middle school level. So I came up with an idea. I thought, be nice to have a staff choir or a district choir. And then a little birdie in my ear told me that we were thinking about maybe involving alumni something, one or another. I don't know what's going on there, but it'd be kind of neat to have a staff / alumni choir for the district. So I'd like an opportunity to meet with the superintendent or the powers that be to discuss that, as well as an opportunity to meet with the superintendent and building principal to discuss and how I can come and give back to my alma mater. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Please say that the board is excluded from that.
The board is not excluded. Water girl.
I have one question for you. Did you root for my sons when they were playing football here? The Touré boys?
No comment.
You don't remember my sons?
I don't remember.
And end of this conversation.
What year they graduated?
99, 2000, and 2001.
Okay, I don't.
Or 98, I don't know. You're asking me a hard question.
Yes. Can I go with
Just say
this?
yes, just say yes, okay? And don't call on them because none of them can sing. Have a nice day.
Thank you.
Next, we have Mary Bragg, negotiations update. Union President.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I wanted to take this opportunity to thank the administration and for the time last week to, in the facility, some time to present to our members all the information of the tentative agreement. Last evening, we held our ratification vote. Out of 278 votes total, we had 205 yes votes for the contract ratification at a 73.74%. 2/3 or 67% is needed to pass. So thank you for the tentative agreement. Well, and now the contract, now that it has passed, and appreciate and look forward to continuing our collaborative efforts to move the district forward.
Okay, that concludes our public comment portion of the meeting. Next, we have board updates. Any board updates?
Are you announcing?
Yeah, I have something, I don't know, if under board updates or business, but I want to just ask, how does the field look for Friday? Keith, and how are we coming with our, your master plan, or your look at what we're gonna need to maintain the facilities and the building? And the grounds, I mean.
Good evening, everybody. As far as the field for this Friday, we all know it's never gonna be beautiful, but it looks a lot better than it has. You know, we had a couple weeks break, and we did cross aeration. We actually, we top dressed over 12 yards of dirt on top of the field, dirt and sand, you know, so we can get down into where we aerated. Basically what we're doing now is we're helping more from next year than for this year. We'll never regrow all that grass. We'll put seed in this year yet. And then we have about a 3-week break after this upcoming game. So we plan on more of the same. We're doing the same thing with all the fields now. We're not doing so much top dressing right now. We're going to be doing more aeration, especially like on the soccer field. We know it's not going to get used. I do have proposals from sports field, a couple more for actual because if we want to get that soccer field, if we want it available for next spring, we have to start next week. You know, just because there's very good, and you know, a third field, quarter field maybe. So that's what we're working towards right now. And we, like I said, I got a couple proposals both for the football field and for the soccer field, and then just a basic care plan for the practice fields. But a lot of the practice fields need again is aeration. And we do have equipment that hasn't been used in a couple of years because they were scared of hitting the irrigation. So vertebrae, which aerates, but also basically tears the soil up. And that's what we can't use that on the football field, but we can certainly use it on the practice fields as long as we know where the branch feeds for the irrigation are. That's going to make a big difference on the practice field, just as far as how hard they are. I don't know if they're like rock. And the aeration softens the fields up and breaks everything up, you know, let the roots grow and grow deeper. We do have the capability to do that. We need, you know, it's just manpower at that point because we have the equipment, and we're working on that. With the master plan, the working process, we're still, you know, I think once we get the dust settles in the middle school, we get to sit down and really think about that a little bit more. We'll come up with a better plan. Working with Dr. Jones and Dr. Jones on that.
The next question you were talking about the equipment lines, you know, what are the lines, did you say?
Right, the irrigation lines that are around the,
How do you find that out?
we actually put it in on the practice field. So we, you know, of course you have the irrigation heads already, and we know that where the tubing header ran and the branch lines ran. So we're marking those, and actually, the athletic director here has been helping us with marking these heads. And then we can just run parallel to the lines. We won't run over the lines. So it won't be 100% aerated, but it's gonna, 80% aerated.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Okay,
No warriors. Sorry.
I also have a board update. I informed the board a few weeks ago that as the program chair for our Three Rivers Division of Illinois Association of School Boards, I was asked to be a part of the ISB listening tours, where we testified before ISB in regards to their implementation of the ESSA law. And each state is required to develop a plan under this new law, this federal law. And so ISB has been conducting listening tours throughout the state. And I believe they've done a lot. They're planning to do at least 40. And I participated in one that was similar before, but I wanted to just share some important information regarding last night's meeting. One of the things that's being discussed that would affect the school districts is the amount of weight we place on academics when it comes to holding districts accountable. So currently, our state has an act, Public Act 99-0193, that was put into law last year. Excuse me, I'm a little cold still. Excuse me. Under this act, it would assign 30% of weight to student performance and 70% of weighting to non-academic indicators. And the indicators consisting of 3 areas, which would be compliance, practices, and contextual evidence provided by the school district. However, under ESSA, it is proposed that the percentage will change because ESSA requires a significant portion of accountability be placed on student performance. But ISB is projecting that they will require us to at least weigh student performance at 51%. As far as contextual evidence, that was a very hot topic because now ISB wants districts to be able to tell their story. So basically, they want districts to be able to give information about school climate issues, community data, and other evidence of improvement related to our specific challenges, as well as accomplishments. So they recognize that the numbers don't tell the entire story. They want districts to be able to add in verbiage that explains some of the things that the district is facing. They said that the 5 essential survey that we've participated in could be used to meet that requirement. Another thing was that was discussed was the fact that schools should not be responsible for factors that they do not control. So that was a huge part of the conversation. When I testified, I talked about the fact that school districts are basically held accountable for the learning history of new students. So we get students that come in from other districts, and whatever that district has provided, we are now inheriting what that child has learned or not learned. I know that, and when we previously had the education committee, I remember Laura breaking down that information by new students and students that have been in our district for a while. And we noticed that in our district, students that have been in our district for, I forgot how many years it was. So anyway, we noticed that the longer you're in our district, the better you do. And so one of the things that I shared to possibly on the school report card, break that down as well. The report scores of students that are new to the district and scores of students that have been in the district, because I feel like that's part of telling the story. Excuse me. Also, there's a push for using multiple measures of assessment. Also increasing from 3 levels to 5 or 6 levels of measurement, where there are more opportunities for movement. There's a push to avoid negative terminology when reporting performance levels. And also in a previous conversation with ISB, I shared there's a concern with how we define college and career readiness. Basically, one test score should not define whether a school is preparing their children for college or a career. And so I'm happy to say they took note of that, and now they're looking at multiple indicators to determine whether a school is properly preparing their students for college and career. And some of those that are in the first draft of their plan are being able to include AP courses, the exam scores, dual credit programs, IB exams, community service, whether you reach a 90% attendance rate or higher, also work experience. So that's some of the things that you'll be able to indicate that if you have these types of things going on in your district, that will help determine that score. I also asked them to consider adding junior ROTC. I know that we've been pushing for that program and trying to get it, and we've, met some bumps in the road. But I think that's one thing that we need to understand, that not every child is going right into a career or right into college. As far as Title II funds, there's discussion on how those funds can be used. There's more flexibility now with how those funds can be used, so that's being pushed. There's a big push to use those funds for PD, for educators. I consistently see students, teachers, and principals, but one thing I shared was rarely see school board members. And what I shared was I feel like districts should be allowed to use those funds for board development, board training, board workshops. A lot of districts do not participate in such because of funding issues. So that's something they took into consideration. There's a student growth being assessed over time with appropriate intervals. So we know that with No Child Left Behind, I believe there were 12.5%. Was it 12? Was it 12.5? Do you remember? The intervals for No Child Left Behind originally 7.5. Oh, I'm way off. 7.5 per year. Okay. So one of the things that when I saw that, you question who designed that, because we know that even in a perfect world, there's not set increments of what you would see each year. So there's a need for more flexibility with that and using appropriate intervals instead of some that seem a little bit unrealistic. There's a push to reconsider the ISB growth chart. I'm not real familiar with that. Okay, is that a good thing?
Yes, it's a good thing.
Okay, so that came up, just so you know. Also, flexibility in funding decision-making and school districts determining the best way to use funding to support our students instead of being told how to use the funding. Also, mandates should be funded. A lot of times we're asked to provide student services, but we're not given the money in order to do those. And also, part of the plan is that school boards will need to set short-term and long-term goals. And the suggestion is the short-term goals being of 2 to 3 years and long-term goals being 6 to 10 years. And I believe there's also something in there with school boards connecting with the community and sharing how they can keep the community informed of what's going on in the district. I learned that the contract with Park expires 2018, and that's something that right at the forefront, because I think, even with the park listening tours that we're doing, they're getting a lot of feedback. I was able to participate in that and got information from our administrators to share as far as Park. So I'm wondering if they're considering even continuing their contract after 2018. There were librarians that came because they had some concerns with feeling like they were left out of the conversations. And the fact that they feel like student use of the library should be in connection with the goals being set. And there's a thought that libraries are dying out. And a lot of libraries are not filled to capacity. And a lot of librarians are part-time or sharing, doing multiple buildings. So their association was present. Also, there was an association there of bilingual educators. I can't remember exactly what the name of it was, but they were sharing some of the same concerns with focusing on bilingual education. And also, I just want to remind everybody, the draft is available on ISB.net. It is a draft, they're tweaking it. ISB plans to submit their plan in April of 2017, and the U.S. Department of Education has 90 days to respond. ISB is looking to implement the plan starting 2017-18 school year. They are taking feedback still, so if you want to give feedback, you can email them at essa@isb.net. That's ESSA, like Every Student Succeeds at isb.net to share your feedback, and that's conclusion.
Can I ask you a quick question? At this conference, did you get the sense that
I'm sorry, Mike, can you start that over? I'm sorry. Your question?
I'm sorry. Did you get the sense at this training that you went to that ISB is talking to the colleges and universities so that they're on board with what this assessment and how it's doing, so that we don't assess all these kids and get this, you said something about 70% academic and moving it down to 51%. That when they go to award their scholarships, non-athletic scholarships, just scholarships for academic achievement, that they're understanding that Illinois is moving to change this system, and that change is going to change the system, so that they're comparing an apple to an apple and understanding that we're looking at, from, if I'm gathering this right, the overall rounded student versus strictly academic, and that this child can get the awards that the other kids that from other states are getting strictly because their academic emphasis is much more than Illinois is moving to. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? Am I confusing you? Or,
No.
I just don't want to see this go through all this dance, and get everything ready over here, and the colleges and universities say, well, that's a nice program, but we're not in tune with you, and we're not going to pick these kids. We're going to base it on X and you're doing Y. And, so I guess the basic question are coordinating with colleges and universities to make sure that they're on board with the initiative that Illinois wants to do, so that we're not the kid that's left out. And everybody else is doing it a different way. They don't have a way to award these scholarships, because that's what we're working for, right? The scholarships to get these kids higher education. So I don't want them to be left out because they're doing something different in Illinois, and these universities around the nation have no clue. Do they have like a ISB board of higher education, or college, every college wants to do?
Can I interject something? Next month, I'm going to have the opportunity to go to an IDA convention for higher education, and one of the seminars that I chose is how the Every Child Succeeds Act will affect the college students, and also how it's going to affect scholarships and funding. So I would be happy to, when I come back as a member going for Prairie State College, how that how that's going to be looked at, but I can come back and let you know after that conference. But I was selected to go to attend that conference as an adjunct of Current State, and that's where our students will go. So I can at least give some more information on that next month.
Okay, I just, I don't want to muddy the waters, but I just want to not see Illinois go off in one direction, and these poor kids are not getting what they deserve because we're assessing them in a different way than the rest of the nation. That's all. Thank you.
Let me give clarity. So the 51% is the academic. So it would be going from 30 to 51%. So originally, there was the law that's in place now allocates 30% towards academics and 70% to non-academic indicators.
Okay.
So it's more of a shift to half and half. And again, this is a draft. This isn't the finalized plan. This is what's being proposed. Now, to answer your question about our kids faring with kids from other states, I believe that's what PARC was designed to do. And I'm sorry, not PARC, Common Core Standard. So the conversations of, our students being competitive with students from other states, I believe it was the Governors Association that came together and said, you know what, let's work together as governors to come to a common place of what our kids should be learning in each grade level. So that thus we have Common Core standards. As far as conversations between ISB and the college, they did not address that, but I do know that there is a P21 council, and that is, I believe, the people that are on there are from pre-K all the way through college, and they have conversations regarding how, education affects you from pre-K all the way through college. And those are individuals, I believe the governor or somebody appoints people on this council. But I know that that's regularly what they deal with.
Okay, that's good. If you would, Dr. Cunningham, please just send that link, that email address for ISB. I'll write them a little note and ask them that, if they're talking to the people that we're ultimately doing this for. Okay, thank you very much.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions? Okay.
Thank you for representing our district.
Thank you. Okay, I'd also like to let everyone know that the board has good news of its own. We have 2 board members that are being recognized at the Illinois Association of School Boards dinner next month, and one of those is one of our fairly new board members, Janine Galbraith. And Janine, I believe you've been recognized for the Leadership Academy, is that correct? Okay, Master Level 1. So she's on her way to be an international board member and gain recognition by participating in workshops or online classes, I believe. And so ISB has designed a course of taking certain classes, and then you get to certain levels or participating in different events. So congratulations. And I will be recognized as a master board member again. And again, I extend to my colleagues, I stress all the time, participating in these workshops because education is changing. Even those of us that are educators know that it changes all the time. You have to be on top of what's going on. The laws change. We are in the trenches of a new federal law that's going to change a lot of the major things that we have known to be the standard, and a lot of those in a good way. But it's just important for us as board members to stay educated. And now I'm seeing there's a lot of, not a lot, just little by little more accountability to school boards. And I don't know if everyone knows that there's actually a law in Illinois where a school board can be removed if it has schools that consistently do not perform well. So there is some accountability. We probably see a lot more, I'm thinking, because even, in this language now with them developing this plan, I could see them adding a little more accountability. So also, on behalf of the Board of Education, we do want to say thank you to our teachers union for meeting an agreement with us and passing that agreement. And we look forward to operating in this contract for the next 3 years now. It's a 4-year contract, but a year and a half, 3 years. So thank you, Mary, and all of our teachers and our teachers union. Okay, moving to administrative updates.
Good evening, everyone. How are you today? Good evening. I'm going to basically give you an update from the 15-16 school year of all the remaining FOIAs and what we received starting off with the 16-17 school year. You will get the FOIA ID number, which is the month that the FOIA came in and the number of the FOIA that came in that month. So for example, my first request was May 005. So that was the 5th FOIA that came in the month of May. I will give you a brief update of what was requested, who requested, when it was fulfilled, and the time it took to complete. May 005, copies of all contracts, subcontracts, and other agreements for PMA Financial and its affiliates. It was requested by Katie Drews, Better Government Association. A partial fulfillment was sent in June of 2016, and a final submission sent August 31st, 2016, which took 12.3 hours. Due to the large capacity of this FOIA, it was in the form of a CD. So that CD was not posted on our website, but I do have a copy if anyone else is requesting information pertaining to this particular FOIA. June 001, public comment portion of the school board meeting held June 21st, 2016, requested by Lena Thomas. Response August 15, 2016, 1 hour to complete. June 002, all information pertaining to the efficiency plan discussed at the June 21st, 2016 board meeting. Doris Harmon Warren, requester, partial fulfillment sent August 25th, 2016. It is still pending. June 003, how many total referrals were issued at CMHS for the 2015-2016 school year, and how many were served? Clarifying email was sent on June 28, 2016. No response from the requester of Tammy Byrne of June 28, 2016 is when we sent an email asking for clarifying information. July 001, intergovernmental agreements made with surrounding municipalities concerning who would pay for the road and how payments would be structured. Aaron Gallagher, freelance reporter. Response date was August 15, 2016, 4.2 hours. July 002, lease agreements with telecommunications providers for cellular antenna and towers installed by provider on school property. Requested by Campus Miser, NBC5. Response date August 18, 2016, 10 minutes. August 001, placement process at the high school, number of appeals waivers requested by parents, and numbers of appeals approved and denied. Let me just. Diane Rado, Chicago Tribune requester, response date was August 31st, 2016, 2 hours. August 002, a copy of all expense reports for training, seminars, conferences, and membership fees for Nikhil Hall from January 1st, 2014 to present. Tammy Burnham was the requester. Fulfilled August 31st, 2016, 14 hours. August 003, total amount invoiced from Hauser Izzo LLC for contract negotiations between CMEA and Crete Monee 201 from August 16, 2014 to present, and August 14, 2015 to present. Tammy Burnham requested for field August 29, 2016, 2.4 hours. That completes the FOIA update.
Thank you, Dr. Clark.
Can you tell me what they mean by board, where's this thing? Appeals placement process at the high school, number of appeals, waivers requested by parents, number of appeals or waivers for what?
Basically, this requester was asking if a student is being placed in a particular academic class and the parent did not want them in that class, what was the process? And how many was being, if it was actually being tracked. That's not something that is tracked. It's on a case-by-case basis. But we did give them the information provided to what these classes, how the classes are developed and where they can find the information.
Okay, so you don't know how many people appealed. I don't like this class, is that what we're saying? I don't want to be in this class, I want to be in another class. Is this mainly the high school or?
It was just for the high school.
Just for the high school, okay. All right, thank you.
Dr. Clark, the FOIA request in the past, I'm not sure. Are we supposed to have something streaming here tonight again? Our public comment, why is it not streaming?
I was not yet aware that this should be streamed, but in the future, I can make sure that it is.
The public comment.
Public comments and the rest is normally up on
We
the.
didn't have any public comments from the last board meeting, so.
Okay, I know in September we have 2 board meetings, but I think we should have the same procedure at every meeting. That was what we agreed to.
We will.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we will have our curriculum update, our 2016 academic report. Ms. Laura Hirsch.
I'm going to ask the board members and the cabinet to have a seat in the audience. It is a little chilly. How are you?
Just pretend you're in Fort Myers, right?
Oh, I hear a little feedback. Feedback? A little bit. All right, well, thank you to our administrative team for attending tonight. This is one of the evenings when we ask them to come just in case there's questions that are specific to them. And I want to thank Natalie too. She helped me with the first slide with all of the logos. Turned out quite nice. So I just want to start with a quick review. We talked last year about the fact that our district has a balanced assessment program, and that basically means that we have 3 levels of assessment that go on. One being what's happening at the school and the classroom level. Those are much more frequent, they're used for instruction. And then we have our district assessments that we give 2 to 4 times a year. We look at student growth. Sometimes those are standardized assessments. And then, of course, we have the state assessments, which are those annual score accountability measures. Tonight, we're going to look at standardized tests at the district and the state level. As we talked about in our committee of the whole, the ACT state assessment has ended. It actually ended a couple of years ago, but we didn't have anything in place, so we continue to give the ACT. We will be moving to the SAT. We have been giving the ACT since 2002, when it became state mandated that all juniors take it. Prior to that, it was optional. So our district has kept a historical record for 2 groups of students over that time. One being our high school graduating classes. Our students would take it in 11th grade, and sometimes as they're applying for college, they would go back and take it again during their late part of their junior year into their senior year. So we have a graduating class set of data and an 11th grade set of data that was included in the PSAE when it was the state assessment. Obviously, I can't fit many years of data on here, but I thought I'd give you the last 5 to 6 years. These are our students who graduated, so you can see the graduation year over on the left side. And across the bottom is for the class of 2016. When you look at the entire sheet of scores, you will see that for the class of 2016, those are the highest scores for a graduating class that Crete has had since 2000. So 8 years ago. You can see for each of the columns, the scores tend to trend upward. Each year getting a little bit higher. Still below state average, but again, working toward improvement. And then we have our 11th grade ACT, which again was our state assessment. This year for the 2015-2016 school year, we opted as a district to continue to give that to all of our 11th graders. It was not a state assessment. We also did it in 2014-15. That was paid for by the state. But you can see here, again, that trend upward. The English and composite scores for our 11th grade students are the highest that we've ever achieved since beginning in 2002. And our math and reading scores match the highest scores that we ever had. So as this is coming to an end, I'd say you're ending on a very positive note. We definitely have reached, we can say we have the highest scores that we've achieved during the run of the ACT. What I want to look at this year, which is something different, is not only looking at did we meet state benchmark levels, are we meeting national and state norms, but I want to also present the data around something new for us, which is called the local growth model. And it's a measure that looks at student growth. We contracted with a group called the ECRA Group a little over a year ago, about 15 months ago. And it's a company that does in-depth student analysis of data. And they look at the standardized test scores to create student growth based on past performance. So we're not comparing our students to students across the country, to students down the road. We're looking at our students and their performance over time and how are they doing compared to themselves. The ECRA group took our data for the last 5 years to create this model. So 5 years of data. Using the individual test score data, each student gets a score, which indicates what we expect on the next set of tests. So it's an expected score. And then after each time we assess, after each assessment wave, that score is compared to what the actual score is that the students earn, and that creates a growth score. And then what the growth model does is it takes the individual student scores and combines them to determine growth scores for larger groups, such as classroom courses, programs, grade level schools, and our district as a whole. So everything goes back to that individual student score. And then they create the growth score, and they do a really nice thing, which is they color code it for us, so we are not looking at numbers, but we can look at colors, and it tells us how we're doing. So the growth score, blue means that the students grew greater than we expected. Green means we got expected growth based on past performance, Yellow is less than expected growth, and red is unsatisfactory growth. So if we go back and we look at our 2016 ACT for our 11th graders, you can see the composite scores for each of the subjects: English, math, reading, science, and the overall score. Those scores are for every student that took the test. So a student could have come the day before the test and taken the test, and they would be included in those numbers. But for our local growth model, students have to have been here long enough to have gone through 2 assessment waves. So those are students that have been with us for some time. Goes back to what Dr. Hall was talking about, the new student versus the student that's been with us for a while. As you can see, using the color coding, our English, science, and composite scores for our 11th graders had greater than expected growth. And our reading and math scores grew as we expected for those students that were here. So again, nothing, everything looks good from the growth model perspective. I'm going to work backward. So the next thing that we have here are our 10th grade spring ACT scores. And this is a graph I show every year. This is our district assessment. We always give Explore in 8th. We do Explore and Plan in 9th, Plan in ACT in 10th, leading up to the state assessment so that our students are creating a path to that state assessment. So this graph, we've been showing it for years. These are different groups of students. So that idea of growth, you don't have growth here, you just have different groups of students. One of the things that you'll notice here is that the scores are lower than they've been, and we talked about this last year when I presented how this group, this 10th grade group, seemed to be kind of on a downward trend as far as their scores in each of those subject areas. When you go to the growth model, the local growth model, and you look at those students who have been here over time, you can see how many points of growth they got, but you can also see what the local growth model says about that. So for English, math, reading, and science, each of those subjects grew as expected for that group of students. Overall, it was slightly less than what we expected. 9th grade, the same thing. In the spring, we would give the plan test. Again, the scores were slightly lower than they've been. Again, different groups of students. But when you go and you look at the growth of students who take those tests over time, who have been with us, you can see that our English score was what we expected, but for math, reading, science, and the composite, it was less than we expected based on their past performance. And again, 8th grade, this group, again, scored lower than prior years on all of those different subtests in the composite. But as we measure our growth from 8th grade, 7th grade to 8th grade, because we gave an Explore in 7th grade, it was their first exposure to that group of students grew as expected across the board for them for what they had done previously. The next piece to this that I wanted to share with you are key state indicators. At the end of October, our school report card will come out, and some of this information is on the school report card. One of the metrics, and I'm going to go back to what Dr. Hall was talking about, as they're looking at what they want to call college or career ready, they're looking at a lot of different measures. And these things are now on our school report card, and they're included in the proposal for college and career readiness that is under ESSA. So the first one is freshman on track to graduate. A freshman or student who's on track earns 5 full course credits in a school year. If they get a semester of an F, if they get more than one semester of an F, they're not considered on track to graduate. You can see this metric has been calculated for the last 3 years, and right now we're hovering between 80 and 82%. It should come in at about 81% on the school report card. I reported this to the education committee after the first semester, and at that time, based on the criteria or the definition, we were sitting at 93%. So conversations with the high school now are critical in terms of what happens between first semester and the end of the school year that causes our percent to go from 93 to 81, and what can we do to intervene with those students who are in that position at the end of the semester so that that percentage goes up. So those are conversations that we're having when we meet and looking at what supports we can put in place for our freshmen. The next indicator is obviously our graduation rate. That gets reported a lot. You can see over the last 5 years, we started at 76%, and I will tell you in 2012, we used the graduation formula for how you calculate this. All schools in the state saw a dramatic decrease in their percentage, and you can see once that happened, we've been working our way up to, we're back to 88%. Part of what happens here now is we are accountable for any students who leave our district. Once they walk in the doors freshmen, if they leave, we have to find out where they went. And if we don't know where they go, then we're held accountable to them in that graduation rate. So if they go home to school, if they go private school, if they transfer to another public school, we have to actually track that information down so that we're accurately reporting why those students are no longer part of that freshman group that entered in, 2013. The next indicator is what we just discussed, that whole idea of college and career ready. Right now it's defined as an ACT composite of 21 or higher, and it first came out in 2014. We were at 29%. We project that on the school report card, it will be at 38%. So we've had a 9% increase over the last 2 years. And then the next one is 8th grade students passing Alpha 1. Again, last year was the first year that was used, and that appears on the middle school report card. Last year for the middle school, we were almost at 24%, 23.8, and the state was at 28.4. So we were a little bit behind that. For this year, we calculate that we're at, well, we don't calculate it, the state actually has done that for us already. We're at 22.6%, that's what will come out on the report card. But one thing I wanted to make note of is that last year, we also had 23 seventh graders that completed Algebra 1. Those students do not show up in this percentage. And once the report card comes out, we will have the state average, but we don't have that yet. The next one that is an indicator for the state is this idea of participation in advanced coursework. And again, this goes back to what Dr. Hall was talking about in terms of the college and career ready. You can see for our students for last year, we have two things that are reported. One is advanced placement, and the other is dual credit. Both of those are considered advanced coursework. So what this slide shows is the grade level, and it shows the percentage of students that are participating in advanced placement, in dual credit, or in both courses. So when you go across and you add up the percentages, they won't add up because you may have students that are doing both AP and dual credit, so it's not an apples to apples number in the combined column. But one of the things that I think is very interesting here is that our 9th graders started out with over 1/3 of our students participating in advanced coursework last year. We see a dip at the sophomore level, but by the time students are seniors, over half of them are involved in advanced coursework. And we currently are working with the equal opportunity schools to even increase that, as well as Prairie State, to increase opportunities for students to participate in those kinds of courses. So it's a great metric, and I'm sure we will have numbers that will be increasing over time. Yes.
The question was asked earlier about the place of people in the West. So is this an area that you see this is significant? Kids aren't trending into the 12th year. So is this a situation where if they don't do 10th grade or 11th grade ask for a request, or is it placed based on, I don't know, the ACT work? Do you guys have in place someone? I asked you, Dr. Burton, Superintendent Cunningham, because I know just as parents, if, I had a kid who started in that 9th grade whatever advanced placement. Basically, as a child, not knowing that it's significant to have this placement. I mean, are we allowing them to make a decision and or what are we doing as adults and to insist that you stay on this track?
I think it's a twofold thing. First of all, one of the conversations we talked about is that the placement, not so much into dual credit, because a lot of that is, we run that with Prairie State, but the advanced placement used to be very stringent, like you mentioned. Test score, you're in. Our philosophy is changing to a much more inclusive belief about students, and that one of the reasons that we're working with this equal opportunity school group is because we have, according to their data, we have over 250 students that we are missing in terms of advanced placement courses. So one of the things that we're working on this year at the high school with them is to develop a plan to find those students and get them into AP, and also get them the support they need to be successful in AP, to make sure that they understand and they have a belief system that they can do AP, and that our staff also has a belief system that students can do AP. So the AP track is something that we are definitely working on this year to increase those numbers. Because if we want students to be college and career ready, and this is also going to be something that, you know, is being looked at, we want to make sure that we're giving, even if students don't get a 3 or 4 or 5 on an exam, the fact that they're exposed to an AP curriculum in and of itself is a good thing. So we're working very hard, actually in both those columns, but this year with a special focus on that whole advanced placement idea.
The question that was asked, I'm assuming based on the question that someone or parents, it was like full information. Evidently, there's some kind of roadblock or had been roadblock in the past. I say that my kids, they come home with these programs and they say, I'm in such and such and such class. I'm only going to take X, Y, Z. So I'm just asking now, since I'm assuming parents said, what is the process? Because all of a sudden the kid is not in the classes that they should be, particularly with advanced placement. I know that we have to provide information about what it is we're doing to make this transparent. What is that?
Well, the FOIA request was actually more of a generic request on how we place kids into high school classes. So they were looking at, right, all classes. So our incoming 9th graders, what data do we use to do that? Because we send a lot of data from the middle school to the high school. The idea here is that we have to go out and find kids, as opposed to excluding kids. We have to pull them in. And when we get down to, you know, test score, as we discussed earlier, test score doesn't mean, you know, it's just a small snapshot of performance. So while the numbers look pretty good, we're trying to make them better. Yes.
When you're going to go out and you're going to solicit kids to come into this, is the standards going to remain all the same? We're not setting up the child to come into something that they can't handle. We're not going to dump down the curriculum just to get numbers, right? It's the same.
AP has a very rigorous curriculum, and we're required, before we teach an AP class, the teacher's required to be trained. We have to submit our syllabus. They have to approve what we're doing, so they keep a tight rein on what that looks like. And I don't know, maybe Dr. Hart would like to address his and give you some information about his conversations with the Equal Opportunity Schools people, because I wasn't in it.
Yeah, for you, but I'd also like you to make sure you're reminding us that our school has been recognized for the AP honor roll for the last 2 years, because we have to be students in those classes from the minority and female, and raising that list better than most schools have been going through.
So for the past 5 years, we've been recognized by the AP Honor College Board because we have continually increased the amount of students from non-advanced placement, maybe non-traditional backgrounds, those including students from low income, students of color, as well as even broken down by gender, young ladies. We have a strong program here, and we are growing the program. One of the big things that this graph shows, I'm not sure if we mentioned, was the new AP course at the freshman level. AP Human Geography. So we have 15-year-olds coming into this building with an opportunity to earn college credit if they take this course and test at the correct level. The test is not given by Crete Monee High School. It's given here on site, but it's not our exam. So not that we would ever have an interest in watering down the curriculum. However, since the test comes from College Board, we have to not only stay on track, but in the interest of students passing the test and getting that college credit for $75 as opposed to $3,000 for a credit, it's in our best interest to keep up the rigorous standards. This year in the 10th grade, we've also added another opportunity for that same class. So this 10th grade number of advanced placement will be going up as well because of the AP Econ, the economics class. So we'll have a few more course offerings, and we will continue to increase the course offerings, but we are also working very hard to not only identify students, because we can identify students and put them in there, but there's a growth mindset that our faculty has to have, our administration has to have, and the parents have to have. So it's not just bringing them in and dumping them. We will have some nights where we, have like an AP night where, when we're registering students for new courses, we get the parents in this auditorium and we talk to them. And if they want to come, we'll do whatever it takes, because we have to increase the mindset. So many folks are just intimidated by the title that they won't even try. And at one point, it was common for schools and school districts to have different gatekeepers to keep students out of advanced placement courses. And the gatekeeper could be anything from summer work. Well, you didn't do the summer work, so you can't take the class. Or the gatekeeper could have been GPA or maybe some assessment that we've given. And yes, those are indicative of some, it's a small indicator. There are so many other indicators of what would make a student successful in an advanced placement course. And working with EOS, the Equal Opportunity Schools Group, they are assisting us in identifying students using multiple data sets, not just grades, not just one test score, not just teacher recommendation, but lots, I think up to 12 different indicators, including personal interests, the personal, I don't want to say personal fortitude, but there's another term that they use.
Grit?
Yes, grit, the grit of the student. Will they even try? What is it that their parents want out of it? And they are assisting this school and other schools in the area in the quest to identify more students to put into the advanced placement. Not just for the sake of saying, yay, we did it, but think of the rich learning opportunities that happen in advanced placement. And this plays greatly into, I'm sure we'll get into it later, the idea of students leaving this building enrolled, enlisted, or employed, or on a track or path of the most engaging curriculum that will make them the most successful student beyond high school. So instead of just looking at it in the 12th grade, we're looking at what does it take to be successful once they get out of here. Pull it back.
Does this percentage indicate completion of the course or just enrollment in it?
I'm going to go with enrollment. This is off the ISB website. It's our data, but it's produced by them. We pull that information out of our Skyward through our course master. So it could be completion, but I don't know. I can check and get an answer for you because I don't have that answer right now. I do know one of the things, I want to go back to what you said, Dr. Harden. If you think back about 4 years, we put an AP plan in place because our numbers want them to be. We've gone in the last 4 years from about 55 students being in AP. So last year we had 118, I believe it was, 130? 130 was at 130 exams. I can't remember which one, but in other words, we've more than doubled the number of students that are involved in AP. And at the same time, the percentage of students that are reaching that level 3 on the AP test has been going up as well. So more kids, more APs over 3, AP test scores over 3.
And so the gap just continues to be those kids that we just realized 130 students now is maintaining, sustaining those students and
adding more and adding more. And I think the other thing that is important to recognize here, as we are focused at high school on an AP program, part of what it's a parallel push, if you want to call it that. We now are going to be implementing an IB curriculum at the middle school. So those students are going to be getting experiences that we didn't provide before. So we're adding foreign language, we're adding design, we're upping the rigor of the middle school curriculum. So what do we do at the high school level to increase that rigor at the same time, so that as those students come to Crete Monee High School, they're walking into a program that matches an experience that they've had at middle school. Thank you, Dr. Hurd. The next assessment I want to talk to you about is PARC. If you recall, we've given PARC twice now. Year 1, 2015, we had 2 testing windows. We had the performance-based assessment that we gave in March. We had the end of the year assessment that we gave in May. Students had to take 9 to 11 test sessions. And at high school, we chose to test our 9th graders who were in Algebra 1. Then after the first year, they made changes to the exam, and we went from 2 testing windows to 1. There was only 1 test, which pretty much became a combination of the 2, but it was at the end of the year. The number of test sessions were reduced, and we were also permitted, or part of this was, if you had 8th graders who were in Algebra 1, they could now take the Algebra 1 test instead of the 8th grade math test. So when we tested our 9th graders who were in algebra, we also tested our 8th graders that were in algebra. So when we look at last year's meets and exceeds percentages for PARC, you can see the grade level along the left and the state average that's highlighted in yellow. And then you can see our district averages for meets and exceeds for each of the grade levels, and then our school going across. Anything that's in green meets or exceeds the state average, or the state percentage for meets and exceeds. So in English, we had quite a few places where that percentage was above the state average. Again, the thing with PARC is that and it happens whenever you have an assessment. So as Dr. Hall was talking about the PARC contract expiring in 2018 and what's the state going to do, okay, the state needs to test. I mean, that's a federal law. They have to have a test. So if they keep PARC, we're going to get better with PARC, because we're going to learn about PARC, and we're going to learn all the nuances and the things that PARC requires. So as you can see here, we're making movement with PARC because we're learning more about what is on that test and what the expectations are for our students.
How can you go from 56 at grade 3 and drop 20% grade 4?
Well, it's different groups of students. So what we would have to do is to go back and look at last year's 3rd graders at Monee to see how they did, and then look at them as 4th graders.
This is not
No, this is last year's snapshot of last year. Okay. So we took our PARC for English Language Arts, and then we looked at ECRA's growth model, the growth model for our district. And if you look to the left, you'll see the state averages again, and you see the 2 areas at the district level that exceeded the state average. But then our local growth model tells us how those students perform based upon their past performance. And when you look at this just across the board, everything is green and blue except for 1 yellow circle. So our students, for the most part, made expected growth on PARC In a couple of areas more than expected, and in one area a little less than expected. But across, generally speaking, we're making the expected growth according to our local growth model. When you go to Park for math, not as much green. We have a couple of areas where we did exceed the state average. But what I want you to focus on at the bottom here is when we get to this eighth algebra and ninth algebra. The back here, oh, there we go. All right. When you look back here, you'll see 8th grade, and then you'll see 8th grade algebra, and you see 9th grade algebra. And on the left, the district average for both 8th grade algebra and 9th grade algebra is exactly the same, because Park doesn't differentiate between 8th and 9th graders in their reporting. The state doesn't. It's just combined. But when you go to the far right, you can see how the middle school did for their 8th grade algebra students. So 46% of those 8th graders met state standards on the Algebra 1 test, where the high school was at 2%. When you go to the local growth model and you look at it, the same thing happens down at 8th grade and 9th grade algebra. 8th grade, that 3.7% does not include our Algebra 1 8th graders, it's everybody else. But if you combine those, that growth is, and that's to the right, the growth of the 2 asterisks is as what we expected. When you look at 9th grade algebra, you still see that district number there, which is still green. But when you look at it for 9th grade students who took algebra, that's over to the right, and that's that yellow circle. That did not include the 8th graders. So the breakdown where it's broken apart is on the right, whereas on the left it's combined. It's a little confusing, but the ECRA model differentiates 8th graders and 9th graders. The state doesn't because they took the same test.
These grades, we talked about last month or last week. This is inclusive of all kids, including special needs kids, and learning disabilities.
Yes, everybody.
This is not broken out by.
The only students that are not included in here are special education students who took the alternative assessment, DLL. And those are, I think we had 1%. Mrs. Bellotti, isn't it 1% of our students are eligible, maximum of 1% of our students are eligible to take that alternative assessment.
And we don't know what the state average is. The state,
yeah, the state averages are in the yellow.
Is that including all special needs?
Yes.
Too? Mm-hmm. Across the state?
Across the state.
It's not, they're not just picking and choosing.
No.
So we know that this is a true assessment and our math is control.
Math is, yes, math is an area that needs some work. In certain spots there, yes. Okay, the next assessment is a district assessment. It's our NWEA map. NWEA, it stands for Northwest Evaluation Association Measures of Academic Progress. They put a nice little acronym. As we talked about before, this is an adaptive assessment, which just means that the student goes in and takes a test. As they answer the questions correctly, the questions get harder. If they answer the questions incorrectly, the questions get easier. So it adjusts for their level of performance. This assessment in particular measures students' student growth over time, kind of like they use the analogy of a ruler. So everybody's on the same scale, and you just move up inch by inch, and they call that a RIT score. The thing about this assessment is that not only does it measure growth, but it sets growth targets for students. And the students can actually go in and with their teachers and do some goal setting around what they want to do to achieve their growth goal. We do give this assessment last year. We gave it in the fall and the winter. So we start in September. We give it again in January, February. We don't test in spring, or we haven't tested in spring because now Park is in spring, so too much testing in spring. When you look at MAP, we look at a couple of things. We look at, okay, what is the projected point growth for that merit growth? that they say our students should have, and then what is the actual growth that they achieve. So when you look at the projected RIT, it'll give you a number, and then what's in the green are the actual growth scores or the points that our students on average achieve. And you'll see in that middle column, I highlighted them in green because every single one of them is higher than the projected RIT growth from the fall testing. So in every instance, our students outperformed what they were projected to do. The other thing that we look at with math is how many students actually met their individual target. We should expect about 50% of those according to NWEA. In this case, every single one of our grade levels exceeded 50% of students meeting the growth target. When you then look at our local growth model, and again, the RIT here is every student is figured into the RIT growth whether they took it in the fall or the spring. So new students included. The local growth model is for students who have been here, and you can see at each of our grade levels, we either have expected growth or higher than expected growth. When we go to the math assessment for math, again, the same scenario. You see the projected RIT growth on the left. You see how many points our students actually grew. They're all above the projection. And then when you go and you look at the percent of students meeting their growth target, again, every single one of those is higher than 50%. Then when we layer our local growth model on top of that, and we look at our students who have been with us, how are they doing? Every grade level, with the exception of third, is getting expected growth, and third is getting higher than expected growth. The last assessment that we give, another state assessment, is the access test, and that is for our English language learners. Last year, we tested 63 students who were in that program. 12 of them reached the proficiency levels and exited the program, which means we exited 19% of our students, which is a really high percentage. This year, we have, it's probably a little higher than 75% right now, or 75 students, I'm sorry. But when I did start last week, this is where we were at. The majority of our ELL students are Spanish speaking, but we're somewhere between 75 and 80 students in that program. At this point, I'm going to shift into school improvement plans. And the vision for learning in this district goes along with the board priority 1, which is to provide an effective instructional program to ensure growth. So again, we're looking at growth. The vision is we want our students engaged, and we want them engaged in a high quality academic program. Key actions for our plan here. This year's a little bit different. We decided to shift the focus of our school improvement plans away from having our traditional reading goal and math goal to focus on our instructional practices inventory, or IPI. IPI, we started working with IPI in the spring of 2012, and it's a classroom observation protocol to collect data and measure student engagement in higher order thinking activities, higher level thinking activities. We have trained teams in each of our buildings. Our teachers go out, our administrators don't collect data anymore. Our teacher teams go out, they collect the data 4 times a year. They come back, they do all of the number crunching on that, and they present information to their schools on how their lessons and their students are doing as far as being engaged in higher level thinking activities. So what we did in June, we had a training with Dr. Jerry Valentine. He's come, this is the second time he's been with us. And he's the one that founded the IPI protocol. And he gave us some different ways to look at our data. And so one of the activities that we did this June was we created SMART goals for IPI, trying to make sure that the ratio of higher level thinking or learning activities we're trying to get to equal, have it equal the same amount of lower order thinking skills in the classroom. So we want balance there. So we developed IPI SMART goals based on that ratio that every school had. And then the schools, as part of their school improvement plan, were to list in their plans activities that are specifically designed to increase student engagement in those higher order activities. So it didn't matter whether it's reading, math, science, social studies. What we're looking at is higher level learning. And so put this together. When you look, and the board members, you all have everybody's school improvement plan in your documents. When you look at the activities, some of these are mine, some of these are theirs, a lot of overlap. But you can see some of the things that we're working on this year. So the first one I put up there is define STEM, which, you know, we had conversations with the board, and we approved contract define STEM around performance tests. So this year we are finishing up our training, and we now have a 3-year implementation plan that we've developed for getting those problem-based learning, high-level performance tasks into our curriculum. The high school now has its PLC time every day. With PLC time, we're looking at data and instructional plan. So again, another way to embed and to look at higher level learning activities. We've mentioned already this idea of increasing our advanced placement, this initiative with equal opportunity schools at the high school, and of course we have our IB Middle Years program that's starting up at the middle school. The other big push that we have this year, we started last year, is this idea of getting our Google apps for education and our technology into classrooms. So that's another focus for us. And as the board is aware, we have a committee starting up that's going to be looking at gifted instruction and making a recommendation for the next school year. Project Lead the Way, which is a pre-engineering program, we've now expanded it. It's now a part of our design class at the middle school, and we've also added biomedical science to the high school. So that pre-engineering STEM type of learning is expanding. We've added an accelerated math course at the middle school, and this year, those 23 7th graders who took Algebra 1 last year are now taking high school geometry as 8th graders. We've added art and music back to all of our elementaries, which we know the research on what those electives or those specials contribute to the learning experience for students. The next thing is the State Seal of High Literacy. We are going to award that for the first time to members of the class of 2017. That means that students have shown proficiency in 2 languages, again, a higher order or higher level thinking type of skill. So that will be coming out with our graduating class. Our K-5 group is piloting a next generation science series that is very hands-on inquiry based. The K-5, we've had a math proficiency plan for the last 2 years. The theme this year is Minion Math Mastery. We also now have a tracking mechanism, so we are collecting data on students starting in first grade, and we're collecting data on students on their fact proficiency so that we can track them through the system, so that when they end up in the middle school and they say they don't know their math facts, we actually have a record of when they became proficient in all those operations, and if they didn't, what we were doing to support their learning of those facts. We have new technology courses at the high school, a tech support internship and a gaming and applications course. Again, that is technology and that is higher level thinking. We have added 3 online programs to some of our courses. We had achieved 3,000 at the high school, and last year we started it with 8th grade reading, and we expanded it about mid-year to 7th grade reading. This year we're starting the year with it in both 7th and 8th grade reading. It focuses on nonfiction. It has thought questions. It has stretch articles, so we're trying to move kids beyond just rote learning. And we also moved the software to our reading strategies courses here that our struggling readers take in 9th and 10th grade, hoping that we can improve their reading skills around nonfiction. And the reason that we did that is because this program actually gives us a reading level on students as opposed to just doing coursework and getting more graded. We now have a reading metric on those students and we get it 3 times a year. So we'll be able to track their progress. Our Algebra Lab course is a math intervention course. It's designed to support algebra, But what we brought in this year is a software program that's individualized, where students go in, they take a pre-test, it tells them how many learning targets they've mastered and how many they still need to go, and then it designs an individual learning program for that student. And then the teacher in the classroom supports that with small group instruction. So this program is really designed to improve struggling math students and get them where they need to be before they leave ninth grade. And then the last one is Play-Doh, which is our online courses that we use at Monee Education Center and the high school. It's replacing E2020, which was our credit retrieval software. But Play-Doh is actually going to give us some opportunities beyond credit retrieval to support learning in every classroom and to give us opportunities for blended learning where students can take courses partly online and partly in front of a teacher, and that's something that we will be working on to plan out over the course of the school year. As always, reading strategies are huge, and we will continue to focus on those at all levels. And then the next part is the assessment. Some changes this year. Obviously, we're going from ACT now to the SAT. We'll be starting with 8th graders taking the PSAT 8-9, and we'll be moving that up through 11th grade, and that will culminate with the state assessment in April for 11th graders. A whole host of resources and new learning that has to take place around a new state assessment. I've mentioned and I've shown you data from ECRA. We're going to be looking at it, we're going to incorporate it now into our teacher evaluation. We're going to refine that a little bit, and then we're also going to be looking at program evaluation with ECRA as well. Our grades 3, 4, and 5 teachers are starting to work. We're probably focusing more in the second half of the year, but we're going to really start digging in on some standards-based reporting for grades 3, 5. K2 has pretty much a standards-based report card where the parents are getting information around the skills that students need to master at those grade levels and whether they have or they have not. And when students get to grade 3, we start giving 11 grades. We haven't targeted those learning standards, so we're going to look into how we can better report that. And then the last one is the state is now mandating fitness testing for all students in grades 3 through 12. And that data will get reported by May 1st to the state, not individually, but by certain grade levels and aggregated types of things. So how many students in 3rd grade took fitness testing, how many were boys, how many were girls, no names, just general overview. But we do have to do it and we do have to report it. And then the last piece to this is definitely technology. Technology infuses itself into every area of curriculum, instruction, and assessment. So this year, we have purchased Chromebooks for the middle school using our Title I funds, and we will be shortly at a 2-to-1 student-to-device ratio. We have tablets now for our art and communication arts courses at the middle school. They have some plans to do a lot of digital work with those. So that, again, is a higher level type of activity. Our design tech rooms are set up for 1-to-1 technology between Chromebooks and desktops. So they will have that there. And by the end of October, we will have 3 what we call model classrooms for technology. One will be at Monee, one at Talala, and one at Crete Scott King. So, I'm sorry.
When are those?
We're targeting by the end of the first trimester. Those 3 teachers in those 3 classrooms are part of our initial tech integration group, so they've had extensive training. And those rooms will have an HD monitor in them. The teacher will have a Chromebook. Students will have 30 Chromebooks in each classroom, so it'll be 1-to-1, and they will be integrating that Google Apps for Education into the learning environment in those classrooms. MEC is getting a new lab with Chrome boxes, which is just the desktop version of the Chromebook. So it looks like a regular computer, but that will give them access to much more technology there. ELC is getting smart boards, those should be up shortly. And the last piece of the technology is that our teacher rotation on computers instead of going with traditional laptops, we are moving to a Chromebook. So as we add more devices for students and more technology into classrooms, our teachers will also have the same technology as our students. Middle school has them, Talala's getting them, Monee already has them, and Crete has them. That's our regular rotation for this year. Next year, whichever schools are up for their teacher rotation, they will be getting those same devices. And I can't end without recognizing two of our schools who have received some great accolades. One, and I know you did this at the board meeting last week when I was at the Title I conference, but we do have the school that was recognized as one of the top schools in Will County, and then Crete High School received national recognition from U.S. News and World Report, earning a bronze medal in their preparation of students for college. So overall, looking at this, I see some areas where we need to focus, but I also see many good things that are happening. And I'm happy to report that to you tonight. So with that, I'm going to open it up for questions.
You talked about fitness. Are you just going to assess it, or are we going to actually do something about the child that is unfit? Who's going to evaluate whether they're fit? Is it the gym teacher, or is it?
So the fitness testing is, Illinois came out with new PE standards 2 years ago, and as part of the new standards now, say it's added fitness testing. The first year we're submitting data, so I guess the answer to your question is we'll have to wait and see exactly what they're going to do with it. It could show up on our school report card, which wouldn't surprise me at some point, but.
Are they going to do anything to help the kids?
And it's all done by the PE teachers. So they've been trained, and they will be focusing on, fitness activities over the course of the year. So probably you may have students that have come home already and said they did the pacer, push-ups. Yeah, they renamed it. Yeah.
Okay.
Another question? Well, thank you for coming tonight, all of our administrators. Thank you for your attention, and you guys are free to leave.
Did you get my message?
I understand.
It's probably a good thing.
Check this if you're not going to. Somebody was set up like this.
With people 2 or 3 days a week.
Oh, thanks.
All
Yes. You want me to get him?
Yeah.
No. Of course, I don't know. Why weren't all of them here?
I got to charge her. Now we do.
Well, they're not interested in it unless you, if they're not interested in the question unless you.
Everybody's in my house.
Oh, really? You got a house full?
2. I got one leaving tomorrow to move to Florida, and I got another one going back. I'm like, oh, just get out.
Nice job.
Thank you.
Well, I was thinking the same something about me walking across the stage. No.
It is. My cold medicine must be getting.
Yes. I'm talking to you. That's what we call it.
Oh. You need some cold medicine too.
Next one.
No, not. It'd be nice to have something.
I might see that guy putting the carpet down and still swearing and get angry. They were there this morning. That's the crew meeting? Okay.
What time to throw this thing? Pretty confident, right? Because of back to their previous offices. Not negative necessarily. There's a set amount for a night. Yeah, I've got it. He's got it. Well, we available at the superintendent statement available. They were signed by the other guy. So if you don't have that, it's not an issue. That has to go with
See if it's gonna be 2 nights in a row. Working on it. I'm gonna see. Yeah, first, I get a prize? Yes, you do. There you go. On the back and the warm glow picture. There you go. Nice feeling in the heart. Feels so good.
Yeah.
Not getting those chickens just yet. We hired everybody we need. Just about. Just about.
Well, butter be something better because this one, that one's gone.
It only runs for about 2 seconds.
Yeah.
Where did you buy your house?
And you know what? Are you really getting food? Are you giving real food? Yeah. Yeah.
We ready? Amen. Okay, moving forward. I do believe there is a need to remove item number 9B3 from the agenda. And I have a motion to remove item number 9B3, approved treasurer's report from the agenda.
Moved.
Moved by Mrs. Gaspar, second by Mrs. Galbraith. Secretary, please call the roll. No, we're removing.
We don't need to call them.
Yeah, we didn't.
Just to, voice vote. It's just a voice vote.
We're just removing. Oh, we're just removing.
Oh, you just take a roll call.
Yeah, we're good.
I'm alert. I'm sorry, we're just discussing it. I'm alert.
Can you call the roll? Please.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Anderson.
Aye.
Mrs. Galbraith.
Aye.
Mrs. Gasparo.
Aye.
And Mr. Toure.
Aye.
Secretary's aye. Dr. Hall.
Aye, thank you.
Oh, you know what? I missed Mr. Brown. Go ahead, Mr. Brown. Speak.
Aye.
My apologies.
Consent agenda.
Okay, so just an amendment, no, should it be an amendment to the consent agenda? Just the minutes from September 20th meeting, the regular board meeting, the portion, Terry, where it says Sanders asked if this information will be presented again. Okay. Can you hear me? Okay, so on the portion from the September 20th meeting, and it's where I said, or Sanders asked if the information will be presented again, that portion concerning the public hearing after the ratification of the teachers, whatever, whether we would revisit and make public the new findings, I guess, if you were, the amended budget now as a result of the ratification. And that's not on these minutes. I can give you the written portion of what needs to be addressed, to be amended, and then I'm okay with
The minute
as amended. Okay, you want this paperwork for later?
Yeah, if you can share that with me, that would be great.
That's great, okay, thank you.
So we want that amended. Can you say it again?
We're just having an amendment, we're accepting the, well, once everybody agrees with the.
That'll be the motion. Mm-hmm.
As requested. So may I have a motion to approve the consent agenda with the, including the amendments to the regular meeting minutes of September 20th as requested by Mrs. Sanders?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Anderson.
Second.
Second by Mrs. Sanders. Any questions? Secretary, please call.
Mr. Brown?
I'm sorry.
Oh, you're sorry?
Reading the consent agenda.
Consent agenda. A, superintendent, regular meeting minutes of August 16, 2016. 2, committee of the whole, September 13, 2016. 3, committee of the whole closed session meeting minutes for September 13, 2016. Number 4, regular meeting minutes of September 20th, 2016. Regular meeting minutes, closed session minutes of September 20th, 2016. Approval of application for recognition of schools. B, business. 1, approve payroll for August 2016. 2, approve payroll, approve accounts payable. And C, donations.
Is that it? That's it. Oh, yeah, we do. Okay. Secretary, please call the roll.
Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Mr. Touré?
Aye.
Mrs. Galbraith? Mrs. Gasparo?
Aye.
Mr. Anderson? Aye. Secretary's aye. Dr. Hall?
Aye.
I did him first.
At this time, I would like to acknowledge the donations that were given. Principal Erin Lane from Crete Elementary would like to thank Mrs. Andrea Johnson for her generous donation of Nike footwear for the Crete Elementary volunteer parents. She would also like to thank Crete Elementary PTO for the time and effort in providing help at Crete Elementary. And I believe they helped with the exterior landscaping of the school. Principal Joanne Jones from Monee Elementary would like to thank Pastor Kevin DeVries of Monee Free Methodist Church, thanking him and his congregation for the generous donation of school supplies to the students who could not purchase their own. Principal Janelle Perkins of Balmoral Elementary would like to thank Miss Catherine Underwood, of course, and the donation of 2 bicycles for Balmoral's Positive Behavior Intervention and Support Program, PBIS. She would also like to thank Mr. and Mrs. Richard Duran for their generous donation, monetary donation towards their PBIS program. And that concludes our donation. Moving on to our action reports for business. May I have a motion to approve the resolution authorizing sale of surplus equipment? approval by Mrs. Gasparo,
Second.
second by Mr. Teray. Dr. Williams?
Actually, this is for me. I apologize for this coming in a little late, but I was working with the attorney to try to get quite a few things done at the same time. We're going to have some equipment from the middle school and from the sixth grade center that is going to have to be sold or to be able to be removed from the school and junked. And I was trying to get us a resolution that we could have that would allow us to do that so we didn't have to come back for each and every item. The lawyer explained to me that I needed to go ahead and split it up for the items that we did have set, which was for the Enduring Strings program, which is a program that is at Crete, where they're using these instruments to teach many of our students. I think it's K through second grade. And they came in to talk to me about it. And it is from our old orchestra program. They would like to be able to purchase music and to be able to purchase 2 basses. And we would like to work with them for pricing. And since we are not having an orchestra program, to be able to go ahead and sell this as surplus.
So this is only for the sheet music and those 2 instruments, that's it?
That is correct. Because everything that we do has to be listed on that. So for this time, it's only going to be those items.
So there's no excess furniture or anything like that that's going to be sold to the public?
Not yet. We have to have everything itemized and listed on here to be able to do it. We're going to do that, but I have to have an itemized list that goes to the board. I tried to see if there was any other general way that we could do it to make sure we could get through it fairly simple. There is not. We have to do it this way.
Okay.
I was just looking for the resolution. Electronically, is it on here?
It's been a second.
It's in my book here.
Okay. Are there any further questions?
I see on the resolution, just the secretary, is just the secretary signature required? Or is the board president signature required? It says secretary, Board of Education.
Well, I'll go with Bill again to check, but this is what our attorney sent us in order to be able to sell this equipment. And it was just her.
And I also thought on the resolution, do you not have the tally of the votes on here as well?
Yes, sir. Yes, there is a tally of votes that is supposed to be there. It has to be done at the end. It should have been on there.
Is it something else? I mean, it should be, I'm missing something. 2 sheets, so you have 3, we missed a copy? There it is. Okay, there we go. All right.
I have it.
He didn't attach it to here. Okay, so that's for your signature too?
On
President and the nays. All right. Okay. All right.
Okay, thank you. Secretary, please call the roll.
Mr. Anderson? Aye. Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Mrs. Galbraith?
Aye.
Mrs. Gasparo?
Aye.
Mr. Teray?
Aye.
Secretary's aye. Dr. Hall?
Aye, thank you, motion carries.
Thank you.
I have a motion to approve. Here we go. The employment of certified staff, reassignment of certified staff, leave of absence for certified staff, return from leave of absence for certified staff, the intent to retire from certified staff, the resignation of certified staff, the employment of educational support staff, reassignment of educational support staff, leave of absence for educational support staff, return from leave of absence of educational support staff, the intent to retire of educational support staff, and the dismissal of educational support staff.
So move.
Moved by Mr. Brown.
Second.
Second by Mrs. Gasparo. Secretary, please call the roll.
Mr. Neal needs to, sorry.
Take one meeting off and just read the whole process, right?
For certified staff employment, that is Lisa Plumley, Rosalind Shaw, Ryan Wellborn. Certified staff reassignment, Danielle Brown. Certified staff leave of absence, Kayla Anderson. Educational support staff employment, Deborah Braun. Tracy Friel, Lisa Garza, Dewan Johnson, Morgan Pfeiffer, and Jonina Blunder. For educational support staff reassignment, Jennifer Coleman, Sally Dorr. Educational support staff leave of absence, Kimberly Whiter. And educational support staff resignation, Janice Nelson.
We're done. Okay, thank you. Secretary, please call the roll.
Mr. Toure?
I want to vote no.
Okay. Mrs. Gasparo?
Aye.
Mrs. Galbraith?
No.
Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Mr. Anderson?
Aye.
Secretary's aye. Dr. Hall?
Aye, thank you. Motion carries. We have a motion to approve the purchase of True North Logic calibration module. Moved by Mrs. Galbraith.
Second.
Second by Mr. Toure. Mr. Neal.
Yes, we discussed this in the committee of the whole. This is a module that is put out by the company that houses our software for our evaluation program for our teachers. And what this system does is twofold. It helps us to calibrate our administrators so that they are evaluating teachers consistently across the district, and also allows us via approval from the Illinois State Board of Education, which I have now received, to use this for recertification for administrators to evaluate teachers. I had said at the committee I would not bring it forward until that approval was received, and it was received last week. So now I'm bringing this forward with a recommendation that we approve the purchase.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay, Secretary, please call the roll.
Mr. Anderson? Aye. Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Mrs. Galbraith?
Aye.
Mrs. Gasparo?
Aye.
Mr. Toure?
Aye.
And Secretary's aye. Dr. Hall?
Aye, thank you. Motion carries. Old business? New business?
Wait, sorry, I couldn't get my mic on. I have old business. I have a question. I believe it was either March or April. We voted to move the technology equipment and items from the 6th grade center over to central office, I believe, and I'm trying to figure out what's going on, seeing as we're at the end of September.
Are you referring to the decommission of the 6th grade center?
The fiber optics and
Okay,
main
yes,
board,
yes,
things
yes.
like that. There were numerous things that were supposed to be moved.
I don't know if that was a vote, but.
Yeah. I don't think we voted on that.
I believe we did. That we gave approval.
Mr. Lyle is back there.
Mr. Lyle, can you help us out? Please.
Sorry.
Good evening.
Are you okay?
No, I'm sick.
No workman's comp. No workman's comp.
So I believe you're referring to the move.
Relocation.
Relocation project.
That's complete.
That was started in March, or approved in the March board meeting. You're asking for a steps for that. And well, I'm going to have to refer to the business office. That we did part of that actual work. That was for the signal project, and that was when we did the fiber rate approval in April. So that work, I can't speak to actually the completion of it because that's not been.
So, to your knowledge, those things we approved, do you know if they're started, if they're finished? I mean, I remember approving it since I have notes and everyone else gave me on it, so I'm trying to find out if we carried through on what we approved.
There are components of that approval that we did for, so for instance, for the removal of relocation of the equipment from the sixth grade center to the central office. There needs to be components in place such as our air conditioning and our electricity that had to be put in place first before we can actually get those things in place. As of today, that has not been done.
Okay, what about fiber optics? That was.
Fiber optics has not been completed yet.
Was there another piece? Were there three? Or I can't remember my
The other
notes.
one was for the wiring components for the high school and for the salon. That's been completed. That's in the process of being completed as we speak now.
Okay, so two of the three have not been.
No, they have not been.
Thank you for keeping me clear on that.
Okay.
That's what I guess I'm asking is,
We
we're
have-
moving these things and they're not done, so I'd like to know where they're at.
Right, we have, actually, we let Keith go, but, Mr. McLean and, Mr. Lyle are working on making sure that the air conditioning setup is set up in the central office and set up correctly in the central office before the pieces are moved. At least that was part of what we had discussed.
Yeah, that was part of the actual project for that.
And that has
Can
to
we
be,
explain why it's 5 months later and we're just looking at it? I'm curious, this is something we approved in April and it's now the end of September. and
Well,
We're just looking at it.
we had to have an understanding of, with buildings and grounds and IT.
So when we approved it, we didn't have an understanding.
No, they didn't have the work done for electrical and that would support all of the air conditioning that had to be done.
So when we approved it, we approved it without knowing what we were doing?
No, that's not what I'm saying.
Okay, so help me.
Okay. In order to put the equipment in the room that we're putting in, you have to have the right electrical setup to support the air conditioning in that room.
Got that.
That air conditioning in the room was being checked out and set up by Mr. Ball. It was before Mr. Ball. And we weren't starting it because he's not an expert when it comes to buildings and grounds.
Okay, so that's why we've experienced this delay.
That is a portion of the experience of the delay. There could be other reasons, those are the reasons that I know.
Okay, and what about fiber optics?
I don't know why the.
May I? I'm sorry. If I could just add a comment. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I just wanted to add a comment. What you're referring to was part of the E-rate application, which is a grant reimbursement that we received. And we actually applied for that at that point for this year.
So what did we approve as a board?
You approved basically the contracts that would be supported, through the E-rate application for this calendar year. So I don't know that the intent was ever to have it done at the beginning of the summer. Of course, with everything going on at the middle school, that was a priority for buildings and grounds, technology, and the business office. But I don't know that the intent was ever to have it done by the end of the summer.
Okay, because looking at my notes, that's not clear at all, so.
We have an E-rate application on an annual basis that will usually happen in that time frame, February, March, and it'll be for the following year. Just like for the title grants, Laura prepares an application and all of that several months in advance of when those dollars will actually be approved and expended.
Okay, because that's not clear in the notes from the meeting, so thank you. I thought we were approving for it to happen and it was supposed to happen. So I checked off as.
Oh, we have to wait for you to give it back to us as approved.
Okay, so it hasn't been approved?
Yes, it has been approved now, hasn't it? Has the E-rate application for this year been approved?
Well, there's two methods of recouping funds from here. You can either recoup the funds up front, which is called SPI. That's before the work is actually completed, and you get your reimbursement for whatever rate you submit for. Or you can do what's called 472, which is called bear. And that's when you get the monies or the funds after that actual project has been done. So the federal grant has not been completed yet, but there's different options with recouping for E-rate.
You missed that. They're asking you.
There is no program.
The 471 is.
It's approved. Yes. 471 has been approved. That was approved when I April when I did the work. The 471 has been approved, but as far as recouping, we have to recoup by either for the front side, which is the SPI, or once the
I'm with you, but we're okay to get the money now that it's this year. That's what. Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Whichever way we do it, but we're okay to get the money. That's what that.
So we have to make a decision on what we're doing?
No. You have two options that you could do.
Right, I see. So is that where we're sitting at? We need to decide what we're doing, so we do it?
I don't think, no, that's a part of the.
As part of the process, the federal government tells you, okay, you're approved for these 5 services. And they approved us for these 5 services, but the application is not officially approved until the board has voted on it, which you did in March, April, and that's for the next year. Now, what Mr. Lyle is talking about is how we get the money back. Do we get it back up front or do we get it back after the fact? And that's not a decision that has to come to the board. That's just an accounting procedure that we have to determine.
So I guess I'm back to my original question. Are we going to be starting to work on this? Is it just something hanging out there, or where do we stand on this?
It's in process for this year, for this calendar year.
So by December?
Or fiscal year, by the end of June, worst case scenario, because it's a funding year that aligns to our fiscal year.
So at this point, we're still maintaining it at the 6th grade center?
As it stands today, yes.
Okay.
But what does that mean? You're saying it's in the process? Because that's not definitive. What does that mean? It's in the process?
Well, just as any other grant, you have a full year to take care of all the professional development and all of the things that you've included in the grant. So we have a full year to finish all of the projects that have been approved for our E-rate funding for this year.
But I don't need to tell them specifically what is our plan on implement. What is the timeline? What are we looking to do?
Okay.
I don't know if that's what Janine was asking specifically.
I think yes, I can. Thank you. That's what I am saying is that where do we stand with this? Because right now, do I understand if you have to do anything, Mr. Lyle? You have to go to the 6th grade center to physically do things there?
Yes, we have to
set something
there's going to be downtime. We have to take the network down. This is a huge project. So this is going to be something that's going to require
planning.
Honestly, it's usually probably going to take maybe a week.
Because my understanding is Sentinel is doing
Yes. That's right.
It would be us, so we have to schedule this or whatever with that.
Yes, we will.
There are things that affect the entire district from this, is that correct?
That's right.
Okay. So
Mrs. Galbraith, we're in the process, and part of what I was saying was that they have to get up and have everything figured out with the air conditioning. And then after they have the air conditioning figured out, they know where they're putting it, they have the racks. Once they have that all set, I will report back to the board when it's being, and they will have, they'll probably do, my suggestion would be that they do it over Christmas break, because that'll be the longest amount of time.
Holiday break? Winter
Yes.
break?
Oops. holiday break.
Winter, whatever.
Winter break.
Winter break.
Whichever, but that they
That's
do
what
it
I'm
over that
getting at
time.
is,
Yes.
okay, we need
Yes.
to get this moving.
Oh,
Yes,
it is moving. I talked to both of them before. That's why I knew both of them were working on it. I talked to them about getting the air conditioning and the electricity straight. That is the first step. I'm not sure exactly about the fiber, but I will make sure that there's a report to the board on that.
I just have one question. Do we have the internal expertise for the electrical and the air conditioning with the available staff we have now, or do we have to go out to contract this?
That will be out to contract with the electrical. That's not, it's not the type of job that you would do by district.
So we have to let a contract, and do we have to approve this contract as a board?
That's something that the buildings business operations is going to bring forth. We don't deal with electrical or the.
Yes, sir.
So, and how about the AC? The AC is already there, it just has to be rerouted, or?
No, there's one AC, like, there is a specific amount of BTUs that have to be taken care of in that room.
So we have to contract both electrical and AC?
Yes, sir.
Is that
And that
correct?
would be RFPs?
That would be what?
You have to do RFPs for those?
No, Mr. McLean is getting proposals for that. Well, yeah, RFP,
Okay.
but not anything.
So they're
formal.
out for bid like constructions or whatever?
I doubt it would be, I doubt that the price tag would require us to go out officially in that capacity. He's just getting proposals at this point. We don't anticipate that it will cost more than $25,000, which would require us to go out to bid.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
And speaking of, this is old business, what are we doing with this great center? We need to start having those conversations of what we plan on doing with that building. I know it's not right now, but we need to start having those conversations. Okay, any new business?
Okay, can we not, just with all due respect, say we need to have those conversations? Can we get some timeline and when they will be discussed? In addition to this question that was just asked, I'm not sure if I heard Dr. Cunningham, if you said, because I agree with Mrs. Galbraith, there was a lot of discussion, that was a lengthy discussion when Mr. Juan it was back and forth. One thing we voted on, one thing we voted against. And so I think it is pertinent to just the follow-up, the follow-through. And I would even say to anybody that's involved in it, I would hope you guys don't come in front of us and say, I think that's this department or that department, because I really don't care which department it is. It just needs that when you guys come to us, it needs to work it out and let us know, because it's very confusing. And you guys work here every day. We come here once a month, and I think we shouldn't be twisting in the wind trying to determine, because for me, I think it speaks to this idea that we've already done something, we have an expectation that something is being done. And the next time we hear about it, it's in the news or somebody complaining or whatever is the case. So I would just like for us to find some way of, that's that board update, administrative update piece, putting it in that order somehow.
I actually started that with our latest FYI. I don't know if it's out or it's posted yet, but we have a buildings and grounds update, which we hadn't had before, that I worked with Mr. McLean on to make sure that that would be there. And this type of project would be on there to make sure that you know about it. And I will do a full update for next week's FYI. And we will make sure we continue to keep you up. That's why we added the boards and buildings and grounds.
Did you get your comment, your question about the timeline?
We'll have another.
Okay. Okay. Any new business? Okay.
So moved.
Moved by Mrs. Galbraith. Second by Mr. Brown. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, nay. Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you.